So this is Howard Lutnick and Jameson Greer of Team USA, and they're sharing the results of the China trade talks. I want to go over this, what they said, and let's just jump right in.
It's been President Trump's fundamental goal is to reduce the trade deficit and increase trade. So this was the first step, the framework by which we will then approach and discuss growing trade. But first we had to get sort of the negativity out, and now we can go forward to try to do positive trade, growing trade, and beneficial to both China and to the United States of America.
So according to Lutnick, you got to get the negativity out, right? We're all feeling negative, and actually, it's quite interesting when you watch this thing. I want you to keep an eye on a couple dynamics. Look at the nonverbals, the body language. Lutnick is essentially the professional court gesture for Trump. Jameson Greer, the guy on the right, is a lackey of Trump, but he's not nearly as experienced in essentially lying to the cameras, and his face tells a full story. So Jameson actually looks pretty upset during this whole thing, which you'll notice. And it appears to me also that Lutnick is kind of the boss here, which we'll point out in a moment here. So let's watch a little bit more.
Do you feel confident to make agreements before?
See, it was right there when Lutnick said, "Hey, Jameson, you got my permission to talk," kind of stuff. So here's Jameson taking the question.
Or the 12th of August?
Can you repeat that again?
Do you feel confident to make any agreement with China before the 12th of August?
Before the deadline? Well, we know that they're motivated. Our president is motivated. We're moving as quickly as we can, so we would very much like to find an agreement that makes sense for both countries. The relationship is complex. There are challenges that can't be eliminated in a couple of months, of course, but there are things we potentially could do. So, I just think we feel positive about engaging with the Chinese, understanding the real challenges we've had for many years, and some will endure.
So it was interesting. What it sounded like to me here is like it's going to take a long time. I mean, that was Jameson's answer basically, and this is very, very different language than what they came in, saying before, that everyone's knocking on the door and we're going to go at Trump speed. That's the stuff they were saying, and we're going to make all these deals and we can make any deal anytime we want. And then they come out with 2 days of trade talks with China. And they're like, well, this could take months and months, and their demeanor looks really, really negative. And then, from Lutnick's point of view, he's just like, well, we're just trying to get rid of the negativity. Like it's actually pretty shameful how bad these guys come across. Let's look at more some details. What else do they say about this?
Not really extend the deadline. Extend the deadline.
Well, listen, that's going to be up to the president, right? I mean, that's all of this is up to the president. He's been asked directly about this sometimes, and he says something like, "We'll see." So I'm not going to say more than that.
Oh, we'll see. We're just gonna ask Trump, and he'll say, "We'll see." I'm not gonna say it, and it's like, then they start laughing, like they know this is a charade. It's crazy. Let me show you a bit more. This is actually the kind of person that Trump is, which you guys already know, but I just want to use this as an example. Trump will tweet out stuff. I hate Taylor Swift, right? That's their boss, this guy who cares about pop stars and that kind of stuff. And in contrast, this is President Xi over in China, the kind of stuff that he tweets out. This came out today. Recalibrating the direction of the giant ship of China-U.S. relations requires the two sides to take the helm and set the right course, right? So this is the sort of things that you'll find among the Chinese leadership. They really care about their language. They're very careful about this stuff. And on the American side, I hate Taylor Swift. So that's what it is. Let's hear more from the American side. What's going on?
On chips like the H20 from NVIDIA, will they ever be on the table to lift those restrictions?
I mean, again, this conversation is about the Geneva Consensus, the Geneva Agreement, and implementing that. I mean, when it comes to export controls and all these different things, I mean, in 8 years of negotiating with the Chinese, I've never had a meeting where they didn't want to talk about export controls and that kind of thing. I mean, we're focused on the Geneva Agreement. We're focused on the calls for the president's implementing that.
Will we see more rare earth minerals come in?
We do absolutely expect that the topic of rare earth minerals and magnets with respect to the United States of America will be resolved in this framework implementation. That is a fundamental part of that. Also, there were a number of measures the United States of America put on when those rare earths were not coming. You should expect those to come off sort of, as President Trump said, in a balanced way. When they approve the licenses, then you should expect that our export implementation will come down.
Yeah, I just don't believe anything these guys say, and I'm just letting you guys decide for yourself. So when I watch it, I look at Jameson's face. That's Greer, the guy on the right. I mean, doesn't feel very confident to me. Ludnick's the more experienced liar, to be perfectly frank. And what they're talking about is, frankly, this is basically how it boils down to. China has the rare earth / raw components, right? Raw minerals that U.S. needs. U.S. needs these things to, build said chips and stuff like that. China then would say, okay, we got the raw stuff. You can, take it, but then you got to ship us back some of the finished product. And this is where it gets really contentious. So effectively, China really wants to get NVIDIA chips. That's one of the things that they asked here. And if you understand Trump's future plan or Musk's future plan, because they're interconnected, is that they're saying, hey, we're going to use a bunch of NVIDIA chips and otherwise to build data centers, robots, cryptocurrency, all this kind of stuff. And we want to lead China in that realm. I laugh because I always tell you that the stuff that Trump wants to do and Musk, it's like a bunch of pipe dreams and frankly nonsense. And so, whether or not we should let China have it for, building their own crypto farms, I don't think China's actually going to do that. I do think data centers, though, is a big deal. And yes, there is money in this kind of stuff, but it may be a bubble worldwide. The other issue as well is, do we want chips, say, to go to, technology into Chinese military and other things like that? So these are actually contentious issues that may not get solved. And that's why it's ludicrous whenever these guys come out and say, oh, it's going to be, done in a week or so. This is going to be a long, running thing. Some people have asked about how do the Chinese, counterparts sound. Let's have a watch of that.
首先感谢中外所有的媒体界朋友们对中美这次伦敦会谈的关注。
First of all, I would like to thank all the friends from the media, both China and foreign, Chinese and foreign, for your attention to this meeting.
特别是现在应该是晚上11点多了吧？12点多了，在外面你们守了这么长时间，非常辛苦。
It's already midnight, almost 12 in the evening, and it's really been a very long day for all of you.
其次，我要感谢英国政府为这次中美会谈给予的支持提供的便利。
And secondly, I would like to thank the government of the United Kingdom for the support and facility that it has provided for this meeting.
当然，我也要说，就在你们在外面很辛苦的等候的时候，中美两国团队在大楼里面，我们也非常努力的工作。
Of course, I would like to say that whilst you are waiting outside very anxiously, the teams from China and the United States were also working very diligently.
So if you, I mean, and you guys can make up your own mind, but for me, if you are watching this and you had a choice, if say you're Canada or, say you're Australia or Germany or, wherever you are, and you had a choice of, which team would you choose to negotiate with and make deals with? Would you go with the Chinese team here who come out respectfully, thank people, these kind of things, treat you with respect, or would you go with the U.S. team who basically try to fast talk you and stuff like that? And you'll see more. I mean, to me, that choice is obvious, and it's shameful because I just want to make it clear, guys. I want the USA to do well. Trump people aren't putting us in a good position right now. It's you can see it with your own eyes. The basic gist of it, what they keep saying, and you'll see it. I want to play some more, though, is that, hey, we're gonna go back to what we agreed to have a framework of talking more. That was back in the Geneva / talks, and that was what was all about, like setting up bat phone essentially with each other so we could talk. And so I guess the talks in UK was all about going back to talking some more. That's really all that we have. But I want you to hear them say it with their own words. So let's watch some more.
Makes this meeting different than Geneva. What was asked outside Geneva?
Is there a time frame?
Well, the difference between this meeting and Geneva is Geneva set the framework, but for whatever reason, it just wasn't happening. It was going too slowly, too painfully, and so we put that on the table. But most importantly, you had President Trump and President Xi on the phone together, and they gave sort of the fundamental foundation on which we were able to reach agreement. Without those two leaders, it was very difficult, but with the two leaders talking, I think we both sides had that strong push to let's get this done. That's why we stayed at it so late in the day, that we never stopped. We started early, we ended late. You have to get things done if you're working for President Trump, and I'm sure they felt they had to get it done because they were working for President
It's like
Xi.
it's so incredible. Like, how do you say all these words without really saying anything at all? How I read this, guys, is I mean, and Jameson's face does it all. He's like a just like a possum in the headlights, getting hit by a car kind of stuff. Is yes, we have to negotiate with China. Yes, we totally do. But how do you trust these kind of people? The way I also read this, which is quite a fascinating, and just my opinion, it feels like Trump sends them out on to do these, essentially the Team USA to do these mission impossibles, makes a bunch of demands and stuff like that. And they just can't come through with what Trump wants. And so then they got to go back to your boss and it's like, well, we've agreed to talk more. And then Trump will make crazy demands, like whatever. The other way you can read this as well, and this is where it gets really tricky. These three guys, you got Greer, you got Lutnick here, and then the one who's not here, he left early, was Besant. Is who's in charge? I mean, and I mean with all sincerity, who's in charge here? Because if you want to read it one way that Trump's making decisions, which I don't think he necessarily is, I mean this is what's really hard to read. So yes, Trump is the boss, and I think there's certain things that Trump wants here. Basically, I'm pretty sure Trump just wants a photo op with President Xi. Trump wants to figure out ways to, can I build more hotels in Beijing, or come up with some sort of thing like that. But it's like, who's the mastermind behind this stuff? Or do we just have no mastermind and absolutely zero plans? That's why it's frustrating to watch this clown show play out live. I'm just showing you guys, who's on our team here. I'm not feeling confident myself on Team USA, but I want to hear your thoughts. We'll see some more.
Are they going to have another phone call anytime soon?
Oh, you'd have to ask them. That's between them.
Did they seem motivated? Did the Chinese seem motivated to come to some sort of agreement?
Oh, we're here. What time are we talking to you? I mean, obviously it's 11 and a half hours, 12 hours since we got together, right, this morning. More, right? More.
When was the call with the president? It's like Thursday morning, and it's
right.
Thursday.
Monday.
Thursday, right? And we did.
We got together at 10 this morning. It's almost midnight, so it's 14 hours of being together.
And it was right here where I really noticed, and if you can notice it too, Jameson's really losing his cool. That's how it looks like to me. I mean, you can see he's flustered, he's upset. The way that I see it is like Jameson, they treat him like he's, the rookie, the kid. And because, Lutton's an experienced liar in this situation. You kind of see it. He's like this crazy used car salesman when you ask, hey, what's that clunky noise in the trunk? Or, why is the, engine just falling apart? Or why is there stuff leaking from the car? And Lutton is the type of used car salesman, like, oh, everything's fine. That's just how they build these cars. In that particular year, they all leak things, right? That's what it is. And, it's fascinating, though, to see the contrast between the two guys here. I still think, at least among these relationship here, to me, it looks like Lutnick is the one sort of like sent in to try to be, Trump's right-hand man guy. But Jameson actually loses cool. That's how I read that part there. We'll see some more, though.
After the talks in London.
Well, we have an agreement. We have the Geneva Agreement. Right now, we've agreed on a framework to implement that, right? We have agreement already.
What does that framework look like?
When do we get to see the framework?
Oh, I mean, this is, we have the Geneva Agreement.
So the question is, when do we get to see the agreement? Like, when do we get more details? and the Geneva Agreement, the main function was like, hey, we're going to keep talking. So I guess we agreed to keep talking.
And we're working together very closely with them to make sure that the implementation goes forward speedily.
Geneva was 4 weeks ago. How do you avoid having this situation happen again?
Well, I think the difference this time is you had the two presidents on the phone together, really creating the foundation that is the purpose that this framework is built upon. So it was the combination of Geneva's consensus coupled with the president's phone call led us to feeling actually very confident that we will work this out. Now, President Trump's got to approve it. The Chinese side has to take that back to their president. And then once that's done, we will be back on the phone together and we will then start to implement this.
And you can see Jameson there. He's starting to look for an exit. Like, okay, how much longer do I got to do this? I want to run away. It's runaway time. Because they're asking, like, asking questions like, how long is this going to take? Is there going to be more phone calls? These kind of stuff. I mean, these guys look terrible. I mean, can you guys see it too? And am I crazy or am I just completely wrong? And you watch the American team and you're like, oh yeah, this is the best that America's got. Is that what you guys think? Are these the gold medalists of trade that America has? And if so, man, it's pretty shameful. But I mean, yeah, and I want you guys to see this stuff. Actually, usually, for say, both Lutnick and Greer, haven't had them see them together this much actually. Oftentimes, whenever Trump appears, it'll be Lutnick with Bissett will be there, but I haven't seen Greer or them. So it's actually funny to see the interaction. And actually, that's actually another to just kind of point out. And if you talk business, you know, you got to talk about this kind of stuff. The guy in the very back, I'm not quite sure who that is, but he has kind of a how should I say it? Well, to say negative look throughout the whole meeting. You can watch, you know, if you want to rewind the tape, you can watch it all. But Greer actually is interesting. I think he might be taller than all of them, but just his sort of personality comes out smaller than everyone else. So that part I always find fascinating, how some people sort of grow, you know, or seem bigger than their physical, you know, appearance, and some people, you know, are smaller than their physical appearance. So you know, your physical size isn't everything. It really is, you know, who you are, in terms of like how you present yourself. Let's watch some more though.
But do we have any
breakthrough?
Any?
Well, I think we have the two largest economies in the world have reached a handshake, right, for a framework. We're going to start to implement that framework upon the approval.
That's our new saying, right? We've got a handshake for a framework. That's what we've got, okay? And the framework, remember, is to keep talking.
President Trump, and the Chinese will get the President Xi's approval, and that's the process. So once the presidents approve it, we will then seek to implement it, and it is by definition, two giant economies have lots of complex issues, but I think we pounded through all of them, and I think we've reached a framework to implement the agreements that have been reached.
Did you guys have a call with President Trump today or yesterday to
The
brief
question,
him on the
did you
talks?
talk to Trump is the question.
Obviously.
And what
What's
was
his
his
reaction? What's his reaction?
Well, the motivation for the team is clear. The direction was clear. The conversations were clear. And I think the outcome, now we're going to go fly back, and we're going to go brief, the three of us are going to brief President Trump.
Jameson's totally checked out right now. And Lutton is just like, oh, did you talk to Trump? Yeah. What Trump said was clear. Everything was clear. We're going good. James is looking down like, oh my God. Here's in contrast. I want to show you in contrast. This is what the Chinese delegation said when kind of asked similar questions. What happens next?
以及原则达成的这种落实框架，向各自的领导人汇报。
The two sides will bring back and report to our respective leaders the talks in the meeting, as well as the framework that was reached in principle.
我们希望这次的伦敦会谈取得的进展，有利于中美之间进一步增进信任。
We hope that the progress we made in this London meeting is conducive to increasing trust between China and the United States.
进一步推动中美经贸关系稳定健康发展。
To further promoting stable and sound development of China-US trade and economic relations.
也为全球经济的发展注入积极的正能量。
And also to inject positive energy into world
What I
economic.
notice here, and I keep seeing it with all of from the Chinese side language, is they keep talking about like respect and trust. And basically it's because, you know, they feel like they're disrespected from, you know, the Trump people. Like you feel disrespected if the other side sends, you know, their JV or, you know, elementary school team over to debate you or to talk with you. You feel disrespected when they don't understand anything that's coming from the American side. Like, and you know, this is sort of, and it's not just that, it's just the way Trump treats everyone. And so that's why you're talking about trust. Like we need at least have trust here, respect, etc. So it's been kind of similar. But the demeanor though on the Chinese side, it's really different. I mean, that's why I want to show you guys like how different it is. And just imagine like, sitting in on these conversations. I'd love to get if I can never find the transcripts on the you know what's said in the actual, you know, I'll let you guys know. But this is the best we got right now of sort of look at the two sides. Like it's really different. You know, Chinese team comes out standing tall, and look at the American side. Look at, I mean, just you can see it in their faces. How we're doing here. Let's see some more though. Please tell me, guys.
How many sections are this framework?
The question: how many sections is the
big
framework?
Document, is it multifaceted? Are we just talking about export controls versus minerals?
Well, the benefit was Ambassador Greer and Secretary Besson had really already done this work in Geneva a month ago. So this is really sort of making sure there's meat on the bones, the agreement is complete, the presidents are behind it. So they really already did the framework work. And this was really just getting everything ready for its implementation. And so I think, you know, this is very consistent to where we've been, to where we're going. I think it's really beneficial to the United States of America. It's really beneficial to the Chinese and the China economy. And I think we will grow from here. We will implement, and then we will seek to grow our trading between the two countries. America has, again, a large trade deficit with China that we are going to focus on.
They talk about the deficit stuff, but I think this is a talking point because it may not necessarily get resolved. And it's not necessarily a bad thing, deficit. And also, their numbers that the Americans use aren't necessarily accurate. So you have all these problems there. I just give you some examples, guys. So for example, if say we're buying more things from one country, so you know Nike, just for example, or you know Apple builds a bunch of products and you know iPhones in China, and Americans buy iPhones from China. Is it like China's cheating us because we're helping them to design, have a partnership with Apple, an American company in China, to like manufacture them there, and then we're buying it from there? Is that like cheating someone in some way? I mean, this is just how our supply chains and the partnership works. So that's sort of, the whole thing is been misrepresented by the Trump people. And this is what you want in a trade. You want to develop, partnerships here. The Trump people, unfortunately, in this whole thing, is they're just always looking to, figure out ways for personal gain, not sorry, gain for both sides. You want to come into trade talks with a win-win perspective. That's something that, it's like, hey, I want to enter in a win-win relationship with you. You win, I win. We both win. That's why we trade. That's why we form a partnership, that kind of stuff. And so, like, yeah, I mean, just Jameson looks pretty terrible here. Let's see some more here.
Idea is to do it in a positive way and to grow our trade with China, which will reduce our trade deficit.
And that's
but
the thing
first
I
we
found
want to
strange too. They keep talking about growing trade with China. Like, I mean, aren't we before? Like, aren't we talking about not relying on China? Now we're talking about relying more on China. We need to talk about growing trade. I'm not quite sure they're getting at. And then the other issue is like, do we expect to sell a bunch of cars to China? Is that what we're trying to do here? I mean, do you think that's even a thing? And that would be something like, are we now going to be sending a bunch of Fords from USA and building Fords in USA and something more to China? Is that where our plan is? I mean, some of the stuff, it doesn't really make a lot of sense, to just be frank with you guys. I don't know. I mean, I'm trying to figure this out the same way that you guys are. I generally want to see what the U.S. has to say, and that's why I'm watching it with you.
The framework launched.
Is there enforcement in this deal?
As long as Donald Trump's the president, there's going to be enforcement. Just trust me on that.
Well, that's a really good answer. I love that answer.
I think what's that? Jameson's losing is cool, because the question was is there be enforcement? Like, if one side doesn't, stick to the plan, he's like, well, of course, Trump's president, right? And it's like, what kind of stupid answer is that? But to be fair to Jameson, maybe he knows it's only matters if your audience is only one person, right? You're only speaking to your boss Trump to keep your job, because Trump likes to fire people. And I'm actually quite curious. I don't think Lutnick's going anywhere, but I think there's a good chance Besant could resign. Jameson's an interesting wild card. I always just feel like he's a lackey. I mean, you could call him an empty suit. That's how I read that. But yeah, well, I want to see more what he has to say, though. I feel like he's losing his cool, though, with this stuff.
So again, listen, we're ready to have a larger conversation with the Chinese on the types of topics you've talked about, and they've telegraphed now and then the kinds of things they might be interested in. We are very focused on implementing the Geneva Agreement and the President's consensus. That's number one. When that happens, that's really going to unlock the ability to talk about more things. And again, there are some things that the Chinese and U.S. economies, they just don't fit together very well. Other things maybe they do, and there'll be a time for broader conversations on that. We certainly, touched on that throughout these meetings, but these meetings are really accelerate implementation of Geneva, contingent on the.
And it was interesting too, because Jameson sort of kind of more his real personality sort of shines through there. One thing when he's like, "Wow, our economies are kind of conflicting, or don't get along, or whatever." One thing that's happening, this is actually a real thing, and it's a real challenge for USA, is what if we get to the point to where Chinese products, be it the Huawei phones or be it the BYD cars or any number of things, surpass the American products? Like that's a real problem for USA. It's actually a major problem for USA when China's in direct competition, opposed to just being, China just makes stuff, USA designs stuff, etc. What if suddenly you get to a scenario where China doesn't, need USA designs anymore, right? You see what I'm saying? So I think that's a big problem that isn't addressed enough. But unfortunately, under the Trump, if you want to call it leadership, we'll say Trump in power, better way to say it, Trump wants to turn all the Americans into factory workers. So if you want to go with Trump's plan and that sort of way of thinking, I mean, in that world, all China needs to do is, come over here, bribe Trump and just start, kind of reversing the relationship where China is going to be designing all the stuff and America's going to be making all the stuff. And I guess if people want to do that, I mean, you can, if America wants to be a bunch of factory workers and that kind of thing. So this is where leadership matters quite a bit to really have an honest discussion about this stuff. And that's sort of where we are. So I want to hear your guys' thoughts. What do you think about what you saw from the US team, what you saw from the Chinese team? And we're going to keep following the story because it's a very important story to understanding what's going on in the world economy, the markets, etc. Do appreciate your time, and I'll catch you on the next video.